Hello everyone, welcome to Zaref Game Dev. In this video, I'm going to create the TappyPlane game in Unity. So if you guys want to follow along, you can get the assets from the GitHub repository. And if you do like my video, do like the video and subscribe to the channel so it can get more views. So let's start creating the game. So the first we are going to create is the main menu. So it's just going to show us a default scene how it's going to look, and we are just going to add a start button to it which will take us to the gameplay scene. So let's create a menu manager. So I'll create an empty game object and it is a menu manager, and we'll add the menu manager component to it. And I'll create it afterwards. So now the game is looking pretty much nothing. So let's add a button. So it's going to be a text mesh pro button, and I'll install all the essentials. And after that, let's rename this button as start. And as we have already imported all the sprites, you can get it from the GitHub. So I'll create a button at the center. So let's position it toward the center, and we'll set this sprite as the button large, and let's set it to native size, and afterwards we'll increase the size to 500 by 150. And similarly we'll change its text, so it's going to say start, and let's increase the size to 128, and let's make it bold, and let's set the color to white, so it looks almost pretty much good. And now for the start, after we'll create the background. So for the background, let's create an empty, and we'll just call it cover because it's the cover. And afterwards we'll start editing in the scene. So the first thing we'll need is the sky background, which is this one, and we'll rescale it. So we'll rescale it in the y-axis by 1.5, and we'll parent it to the cover, and let's rename it to be, and we'll position it more towards the backwards so we won't be able to see it. So let's position it towards 5. So as you can see it in the 3D, here we have the camera and it's positioned in the backward direction. Now after having our sky, there's ground, and between the ground there are the rocks. So for the rocks, let's add the rock to the scene. So we'll go with the grassy rock, and the another one is the down rock, and let's rescale them on the y-axis a little bit so it looks almost better. And after that we'll position in the z-axis to the let's position it as 0, so we'll position it as 4. And similarly for the rock down, we'll position it as 4. And afterwards let's add the ground grassy, which is positioned at 0, and let's move so it looks good. So here's our boundary, and let's position everything. So there's a rock, and similarly for the top we'll position it around here, and now it's colliding a little bit, so let's move it down. And similarly for the top, let's move it here. So that's how it's going to look for now. And let's position the start a little bit towards the downward direction, which is the negative 250. And the rocks are pretty much good, but let's change its scale. So now they are looking much better. So let's arrange it. So it's just the cover, and we'll attach everything to the cover. And after that, we'll attach the plane. So for the plane, uh, we are going to just use the yellow one, which is this one, and it's a full size sprite. And let's just position it here only, and there's no need to change any name. And let's position start a little bit more downward, and negative 350. And now we'll create the title. So for the title, we'll just put this alphabet. So it's going to be the TappyPlane. So T. And we'll parent everything to the title. And it's a little bit increase size, so let's just decrease its scale to 0.5 and 0.5. So now we should be able to see the title, and everything's positioned relative to this one. So let's decrease its x coordinate, and will increase its y coordinate, so we can see the name. You can also use something fancier, but I'm just using the default sprite assets. So I've downloaded from the Canny's assets. So they are almost pretty much good for any game you want to create. So you won't be using up the default cubes text, and it looks better. Now we have almost the starting scene setup. Now after having the starting scene setup, we'll add the on click to the menu manager, and for that we'll just load scene 1. And I'm not going to show you, but if you are following my tutorials till now, you'll know what I'm going to do. So it's just going to be a function for the public void game start, and here let me just show you. So for the menu manager, the which is the start button, public void game start, we'll just do unity engine dot scene management dot scene manager dot load scene, and we'll load the first scene. And there is no quit button, so it's just a start button. And if we reference this function, or we add as a listener to the click event, so we should be able to start a new scene. So inside the on click event, we'll attach the menu manager object, and we'll set the game start function. So now if we click the start button, it should go inside the gameplay scene. And similarly, we'll create the background for the gameplay. And that was it for the main menu scene. You can add fancier like shops and other, but I'm just going with the default gameplay. And maybe I'll add afterwards, but we are just going to see how the game is going to work. So now let's open the main menu scene. So gameplay scene. Now inside the gameplay scene, we have couple of things to do. The first thing, let's set up how the game's going to look. So for the main camera, let's position it. We have it as solid color, and size is also pretty much good. And there is nothing to do for the main camera, but now let's first add a UI, text mesh pro, and we'll just call it score, and it will be positioned from the top and negative 125, and let's position it as 450, and let's make it color red, and let's set it to 00, and we'll set the width and the height to 400 by 150, and let's set it to the center, and let's increase the size of the text so we can almost pretty much see it. Now we have negative 100, so it should look good, and if we do 400, it's almost towards the side. And that's it for the score. Now let's create one more for the diamond. So it's going to be an image, and let's just call it diamond, and we'll just use the diamond sprite, which is the star gold, and let's set its size to 100 by 100, and similarly we'll position it towards the top, and here we'll position negative 100, and let's position negative 450. So inside this diamond, let's duplicate the score, and I'll call it diamond count, and let's set it to 00 and centered for now, and let's attach this diamond count here. So if we position it from the right, and let's set it to 0, and let's position from the x 200 or maybe around 250. So, and let's make it towards the left side. So 250 is almost pretty much good, and size is also, let's set its color to match this color. So that's how the diamond's going to look. Now what we need to add, let's add the start button. So for the start button, it's just going to say click to start. So let's add a button, so let's add a UI, and we'll just need a button, and let's delete the text, and for the button we are just going to call it start, and let's position it from the center, and let's set its sprite to get ready, and we'll set its native size, and let's change 125, and let's position it towards negative 300. We'll position it afterwards, but we'll see how it looks. And let's set up the canvas. So instead of the screen space overlay, we'll set it to main camera, order in layer in -2, and let's have it to scale with screen size. So now let's add the background. So for the background we have the sprites, and let's add it as a bg, and let's scale it. So in the y direction it's going to 1.5, and what do we need to add, let's add a high score text. Hmm. So bg needs to position at 25, and its order in layer should be -5. Okay, so now it looks good. And here for the get ready, we'll need to add the player. So let's add the high score. So let's duplicate the score, and let's just reset it. So, and we'll just call it high score, and let's change the width to something like 1000, and the height's going to be 150, and we'll change the text to high score, and let's set the high score to 0. Let's make it capital, and it's already positioned to the center. Let's just decrease its size. So that's how the high score is going to look. and we'll attach it to the start. And instead of having it towards, let's just have it towards the center. So it's going to show the button for the get ready and the high score. Now, after we have done everything, let's also create the end panel. So similarly, let's hide the start, and inside the canvas, let's create a UI, and it's going to be image, and let's call it end panel, and it's just going to have the game over. So let's just search game over. Let's set it to native size 650 by 150, and we'll position it. Yep. Let's just position it now negative 500. So it's just going to say game over, and afterwards we'll need to add a couple of buttons. So the first button we are going to need is for the restart, and its size, let's set it as none, and we'll set the sprite to be the button large, and let's set it as a native size, and let's change it, so let it be 600 and 125, and it's already centered. Let's position it towards negative 250, or maybe positive 250, so 300, and this one's going to be 150 and 750. So this one's going to be for the restart, and it's just going to say restart. And let's bump up the size and change the text color. Let's make it bold, and that's how it's going to look for now. And after having the restart, let's duplicate this, and we'll just call it quit, and it's going to position at 550, and it's going to be for the quit button. And after the quit, we'll need one more text which is going to show the high score. So let's create a UI, and it's going to be text mesh pro, and we'll call it high score, and so it's going to show the high score at the end, and let's just say the high score to 00. Let's set its color to red. Similarly, let's set this score color to match this game over, and let's bump up its size, so it's going to be 96, and let's increase its width to 1000, and let's position it towards the center, and for the position while, let's position it at 850 or maybe 800. So it's going to show the high score, the two buttons, and it will show that the game is over, and we don't need to show for that. So that's it for the end panel. Let's just hide it. Okay, I just hid the high score end. So let's just hide the end panel and the start button. We are not going to go for them now, but I just created it. So afterwards, we'll just connect the functions, whatever we are going to use. And now let's first create our ground. So for the ground, we have a BG, and inside the BG, we'll add the ground dirt. And for the ground dirt, let's first position it related to the background, and let's set up the size scale as 1, and the BG is 1.5, And similarly, for the ground, it's automatically scaled up, and we are just going to call it ground. And it will need some couple of tags. So there's one tag for the depth, one tag for the score, and one more for the diamond. So no more tags will be needed. And let's position it correctly so we can see it inside the game. So if we position it -3, so it's correct almost. And let's add a box collider 2D with a trigger to it. So whenever we hit this ground, we should be able to see it. And afterwards adding this ground, let's just delete this ground and we'll remove the sprite renderer, and we need to position it towards the top so it's not going to be trigger. And let's position it at 3.5 or maybe at 3.8. So whenever our player collides here, it won't go out of bounds, and if it collides here, it's going to die. And the player is going to move towards the forward direction at which the obstacles are going to spawn. And we don't have anything else to do, so we have our ground, we have our background, and similarly let's duplicate this background and let's position in the x-axis to 12.5. So we have something like a repeating background and it's not colliding with anything. So let's check it. So 12.5 is going to be the seamless appearance, and afterwards let's add the game manager and let's add the player, which is the plain yellow, and we are just going to call it player, and it's going to be pushed a little bit towards -1.3 maybe. It's not going to show here, but if we -1.8, and we'll need it as -1.3. And afterwards let's add the tap left. So it's going to be position around here, and we can see the tap. So for the player, let's just 100, let's change its size to 100, and now it's a little bit smaller, so we'll need it a little bit smaller. We'll just change its setting, so instead of 64 we are just going to use 100, nothing else. So after our tap needs to have some work. So where is our tap right? How is this right and how is this left? Whatever. So we have a scene looking almost good, which is the tap left. Let's just position them closer to the player so we can see it. And the player still will need to decrease the sports, and now we should be able to have the taps positioned correctly. So for the tap left, and similarly for the tap right, and there's going to be one more for the tap tick, and let's just position it somewhere around here, and let's see how it looks. So where is your start? So position uh let's just position it there only, and we'll need to move the high score a little bit higher. So we'll move it at around 579, and let's bump up its size to 84, and no, 72 is going to be fine. And now we'll parent this to the tap left, and we'll just call the tap left tap 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 tap, and it's at the 0th position, though that's not going to be any problem. The player is also at the 0th position, but where's the ground? Hmm, hmm, hmm. So the ground will need a higher sorting layer, and after we click, we'll need a camera follow. So let's create scripts first. So the first script is going to be for the player. The next script we are going to need is for the game manager, and afterwards let's add the camera follow script, and we'll need one more script to repeat the background, so it's going to be the bg repeat. And after the bg repeat, we'll need one more script, but it will be used afterwards, which is the distance destructor. So the distance destructor is going to use whenever we move past the player length. So if we are 12 units away from the player towards the left, then we'll just destroy all the objects. So it will take care of destroying all the extra objects we are going to get. And let's set an on click event for the start button, and we'll need to set up the game manager. So let's position our both VG downwards, and the tap, and we'll need to create obstacles. We already have the end panel ready, and the diamonds and the So the first thing we'll need to create is start the game, and starting the game will need to have the high score and the diamonds. So let's just do it in the game manager. So it's just going to set the awake properties for the player, and the background's going to have both backgrounds going to have the bg repeat, so it will repeat. And let's do, what should we do first? Let's set up the start functionality, and let's initialize the variables we are going to use. So let's go inside Visual Studio, and I'll just script it out, and you guys can see how it's going to be. So for the bg repeat, it's going to have a private transform for the player, and float for the offset, and one more float for the current offset, and nothing else. So inside the start, what we'll do is let's first set the offset to 12.5f, and we don't need to set up the current offset, and we need to get the player. So for the player, we'll just find the player, and we'll just set its transform, and inside the update we are going to check. If we don't have player, then we'll just return else. we are going to get the current offset as player position x minus transform position x. So if current offset is greater than equal to offset, then let's get the vector 3 temp, and after getting the vector 3 temp, we'll assign the transform dot position. We'll update the x by the offset, and afterwards we'll set the transform dot position to temp. So it's going to used on our both the backgrounds. And similarly, we'll go for the camera follow, and for the camera follow we are going to use the offset. So and transform, and here similar, we'll just call it player, and let's have a boolean can follow, and in the start function we are going to set can follow to false. Offset, we don't need to set up the offset, but we need to set up the player. So similarly, we'll find the player as game object dot find, and we'll find the player, and we'll need to get its transform. And inside the update function, first we'll check if not player, then return, and again we'll check if not can follow, and we'll return. And afterwards we'll just do vector 3 temp transform dot position, and temp dot x is going to be player dot position dot x plus the offset. So whatever offset we had for the beginning, we'll just add it here. And to have the camera start moving, we'll just call start following. So first thing we'll do is can follow to true, and we'll set the player to be not player, but the offset to be transform position x minus player position x. So transform position x minus, and similarly let's set up the distance destructor. So distance destructor is also going to similar. We'll get a reference to the player, so private transform, and let's just call it player, and we'll set the player as equals to game object dot find, and let's find the player, and we'll get the transform, and inside the update we'll first check if we have the player. If we don't, then we return, as we'll just check if player dot position dot x minus transform dot position dot x is greater than 12, then we'll just destroy the game object. So whenever the player position minus transform position, so player has gone past the current game object and it's a 12 unit far, and it will destroy the game object. So that's it for the background repeat, the camera follow, and the distance destructor. Now all we need to create is the game manager and the player. So let's what should we do first? Let's do the player. So the player is also pretty much easy. We'll need a private rigid body 2D RB, and we'll need the boolean for the can jump. And inside the awake, we'll set up couple of things. So the first thing we'll set is can jump to false, and RB is going to be the get component rigid body 2D RB dot simulated. Let's set it to false, and let's set the it's simulated is set to false. There is no need to set the velocity because it's not going to move. And afterwards, inside the update, let's first check if we cannot jump, then we'll just return, else we'll do the input dot get mouse button down of 0, and inside here we'll just set its velocity. So rb dot velocity is going to be, let's set, we'll need to move up and we'll need to move right, up v2 dot up, and we'll set as 3f plus, and let's just copy it. We also need to move towards the right, and it's already velocity is going to be moving towards the right, so it won't matter much, and it's going to move in the right direction. Oh, so it should move upwards, it should move downwards, and now let's go inside the game manager. So for the game manager, let's add a public static game manager instance, and let's set everything up in the awake. So the first thing we are going to check if instance is equals to null, then instance is equals to this, else we'll just destroy the game object. And afterwards, let's set the serialized field. So it's going to be for the game object, the first one, the start button, the tap image, and afterwards we have the player, the end panel, and obstacle, and the diamond prefab, which will create it afterwards. So, and let's set a float of last pause x, and let's create an integer for the diamonds score and the high score, and let's set a serialized field. We'll need to include the tm pro, so let's do using tm pro, and here we are going to use the tm text. And the first one is going to be for the diamond text, the score text, the high score text, and the last one is going to be for the high score and text. And nothing else will be needed. So after having this setup, let's set the start button dot set active to true, tap, and we don't need to show the end panel. And after having this, let's set the last pose x to 5f. So we are going to start spawning from the 5. Score is going to be 0. Diamonds are going from the player prefs dot get int, and we'll just get the diamonds. If we have the not the player prefs dot get int as key, and if it has the key for the diamonds, then we'll get the diamonds, else we'll just set to 0. Did you have it float? Nope. Not second, we need to get it. And let's copy these diamonds, and similarly we'll go for the high score and the high score, and we'll get the high score here. And after setting it up, we'll need to set the score text is equals to score dot toString, and similarly the diamonds text is going to be the diamonds dot toString, and the last one is going to be the high score text is equals to high score dot toString. But before that, we'll need to attach the high score, and yep, that should conclude for all the starting parameters. And after that, it's not going to have an update function, but we'll need the start function. And let's do the public void game start. And inside the game start, the first thing we are going to do is start button dot set active to false, and TappyPlane dot set active to false. And afterwards, we'll get the player dot get component, and let's go inside the player, and we'll need to create, which is the public void. And what should we name it? So let's just call it player start. And inside the player start, we'll call a coroutine, but let's go inside the game manager and let's call the player start. And we need to spawn the obstacles, so it's almost pretty much easy, but we'll do it afterwards. Now let's create the spawn obstacle, and we'll just invoke repeating, and we'll do invoke repeating for the spawn obstacle, and let's just start after 1 second. Let's just start initially 0 and 2f. So after every 2 seconds, it will call the spawn obstacle function. And inside the spawn obstacle, we'll need to create the obstacle first. We'll do it afterwards. So let's set the public void update diamonds, and inside the update diamonds, we are just going to do diamonds plus plus, then diamonds, and let's just call diamond text. Diamonds text or text is going to be diamonds dot toString, and similarly let's call it as the update score, and here we'll do score plus plus, and we don't need to do anything, but instead of diamond text we'll set as the score text. And afterwards, let's create the functions for the game quit. So it will just going to say application.quit, and if we are inside the Unity editor, then we'll do Unity editor dot editor application dot displaying is set to false, and we'll end the if. And similarly, the last one is going to be for the game restart, and inside the game restart we'll just do Unity engine dot scene management dot scene manager dot load scene, and here we need to load the second scene, which is at the first index. Now when the game ends, we need to show the end panel and we need to update the high score. So let's create it after the public void, and let's just call it game end. And inside the game end we'll first show the end panel, and after showing the end panel, let's set up the score. And let's update the high score in the player prefs. And let's update it as high score, and we'll cancel invoke. We need to stop the spawn, what do we call it as, spawn obstacle, and it should stop spawning the obstacles. And after that we'll do high score and text, or text is going to be high score dot to string, and before that we'll need to attach the string. So it should show the condition for the game end. We have the update score, we have our update diamonds, and only things remaining for the spawn obstacles, which we'll do it afterwards. And let's go inside the player start, and we need to have the player move towards the center, which is the 0th position. So it's going to be a coroutine, and inside that coroutine we'll update its x position, and whenever the x position reaches 0 we'll add it to its velocity. So inside the player start, let's create an enumerator, and let's call it player initialize, and we need to initialize its movements, so let's just call it movement. So let's first do vector3 temp, so we don't need to create it again and again. So while transform dot position dot x is less than equal to 0 or less than 0, what we'll do is we'll first set the temp to transform dot position. Temp dot x is going to be zero point 0.5 times a 0.5 increase. We'll set the transform dot position to temp, and we'll wait for 0.05 seconds. So it will be done in 1 second, and afterwards we are going to set simulated to true, and rb dot velocity is going to be right into 3f's. So it will have a velocity of 3f in the right, and can jump will be set to true, and we need to find the camera. Find game object with tag, and it has a tag of main camera, and we need to get component the camera follow. We'll attach camera follow to it, and inside that camera follow we'll initialize the start following. So after we have done that, the player should start following and we should be able to move. And we need to call the start coroutine. And for the start coroutine, we are going to call the player initialize movement. And as you can see, it should work now. And now what we need to do is connect everything and every script inside the game manager. So it's already 51 minutes. So it should be completed in around half an hour or more, one and a half. So I've just almost typed all the scripts. So you'll be able to get while I do it later. So the first thing we'll need to attach is all the references for the game manager. Then the background repeat. Then let's just do it inside the Unity editor. So let's add for both the backgrounds, let's add the background repeat. So we added the background repeat, and let's attach everything inside the game manager. Let's reset its transform, and we need to attach the game manager. So this one is the start button, this one is the tap image, this one is the player, this one is the end panel. We don't need obstacles and diamonds for now, but we'll need the diamonds text, the score text, the high score text, which is in the what's happening. The high score text, which is in the start panel, and the high score end text, which is in the end panel. And we have our background repeat, so it should repeat, and we need to show our start function. And afterwards, the player will need a player script. The main camera is going to need the camera follow script, and the start button is going to have all its buttons. So we have a start button, the restart button, and the quit button. And there is nothing going on for the player, but for the player, we'll need the circle collider 2D and the rigid body 2D. And gravity scale, everything else is correct. And we'll attach its rendering order afterwards. Uh, so BG is at -5. Then we'll need our obstacles, and at the front we'll need our camera. So which is the +2? Assigned but never used. So let's hit play and let's see what is happening. So I'm getting the high score and my diamonds, which I already created the game before, so it's getting it here. And let's add all the functionality. So let's attach the game manager, and inside the game manager, that's for the game start. And similarly for the game restart, we have the game restart, and the game quit, we have our game quit. And that should be it for now. And now let's hit hmm, our main camera does not have the camera follow, or maybe can follow is set to true, but inside the player Why it's not following? Find game object to tag main camera. MAIN got start following. So there should be a problem with the start follow if cannot follow. So maybe it's not finding the player. Okay, let's find the player here. And let's see if it is working now. So our camera should follow the player, but object reference player.position.x. Okay, so the camera is not following. If not player, not can follow. Can follow is true. The player is also true. Let's delete the player and let's see what's happening. So. Last POSIX assigned but never used. We have so only the camera is not getting followed, but I don't know where our player is. But let's see. So it's moving pretty fast, and let's see what's happening. Player.position.x and transform.position.x. Temp.x. Okay, we didn't set the transform.position. So we just updated the temporary position, but we didn't set up the vector3 there. So that was the problem. And now let's hit play. Now it should follow. And there is a collider at the top. So we have our BG repeat at both of our scripts, but there's a little bit probleming with the size. So let's see what the problem is. So if we are hitting hmm, 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 12.5. So there's a problem with the background repeat. We need to multiply it by 2 and current offset multiply by 2f. Now it should be fixed because we need to move it twice the position of whatever we are moving. So let's now see, there should not be any problems, and we are able to move in the top direction. So it's rotating now. We'll freeze it rotation so there does not have any errors. And let's see, we have everything correctly set up. So the only problem now is the obstacles are not getting spawned, and there are also no diamonds. So we'll create both the prefabs, and we just need to instantiate it. So we have almost everything set up, and we have our high score, we have our starting button, we have our ending panel, and the last thing we are going to need are the prefabs, which are the diamond and the obstacles. So let's first create the obstacle, and for that we'll just use an empty object for now. So inside the scene, let's create empty and let's call it obstacle. and let's reset its transform for now. And after resetting its transform, we'll add a distance destructor and we'll add a box collider 2D. So we'll see how much size we want to have it. Now let's attach where are the sprites. We'll attach a rock and a rock down. So both are almost pretty much large. Let's just increase its size. And we'll need to position -5 and the +5. Let's attach a polygon collider 2D and we'll set it to trigger, and let's set position it to +5 and let's position it to -5. So it almost looks good enough. There's enough room for it to pass. And let's parent it to the obstacle. And this both rocks are going to be have the depth. Mm, Yep, let's have it depth because if we collide with it, we are just going to die. And similarly for the ground, which both this one, it will also have a tag of depth. And for our obstacle, which is inside the center, let's just change its size to something 0.4, and for the y, let's set it 3 or maybe 2.8. So now it looks pretty much better, and both the colliders are on point, and we'll save it as a prefab. So let's save this rock as a prefab and we'll delete it from the scene. So it has a trigger in the center which will have a tag of score, and similarly it's going to be trigger, and there are two rocks which have a tag of depth. Both are going to be trigger, and that's going to be nothing else. And similarly, let's create a diamond which is a star gold sprite, and let's reset its transform, and let's add a circle collider 2D with a trigger, and it will have a tag of diamond, and we'll also call it diamond, and we'll save it as a prefab, and let's attach a distance destructor skin. So it will destroy whenever it is too far from the player, so we don't need to garbage collect it. Now for the player, let's add the game end condition first, so we should be able to check the restart and the ending condition. So let's go inside Visual Studio and let's go inside the player, and we have our player start the update, now we need to create it for the trigger enter 2D, and if collision dot compare tag, and the first thing we are going to compare is the depth. Then so now after doing this step we should be able to end the game. So let's go inside Unity and let's see if it is working. So let's hit play and the game should end, and if we quit, the game is going to quit, and there is a high score. The high score is also getting updated, and if we restart, the game should restart. And we'll stop the camera to follow and the game end. We'll just stop it from here. So let's go inside Visual Studio and let's fix up whatever things are remaining. So if we are colliding with death, let's first set the rb dot velocity is equals to 0, and after that we'll set can jump to false, and game manager dot instance dot game and can follow. So we'll need to set it as a public boolean, and we'll set that to false. Can follow is going to be false, and it should be it for the depth. And after having this depth, we'll need to create for the collision and let's compare tag for the store. So here we'll just game manager dot instance dot update score, and similarly it's going to be for the diamonds, but for the diamond we'll also destroy the collision dot game object. And for everything this to work, we'll need to spawn our obstacles. So which we have created a function in the game manager, and it's going to spawn our game obstacles depending on the last position X, which will do invoke repeating inside the spawn obstacle. Let's first get the game object temp. There is no need to call the game object temp. Instantiate the y is obstacle add let's just do game object temp is going to be instantiate the obstacle, and temp dot transform dot position is going to be a new vector 3, and will pass the last pose X, and obstacle is Z. And for the Y position, we are going to do random dot range, and we'll go from negative 2f to positive 2f. So it should work. And after spawning this, we'll spawn random dot range from 0 till 2, is equals to 0, then let's instantiate the diamond at the temp dot transform dot position at quaternion dot identity, and we'll do last pose x plus equal to, where do we need to move, 4 plus random dot range, and let's have from 0f to f. So this should work for the spawn obstacles, and we had everything set up: the diamond, the score, and the death, and camera follow, background repeat, and the main camera we are also able to quit. So everything else should work, and let's go inside Unity, see if we can find any bugs. So 2019 update 16, I'll update it afterwards. So let's go inside Unity and let's start playing our game. So let's hit play, and the variable, okay, we need to assign inside the game manager the diamond and our obstacle. So now let's hit play. There should also be some errors, but let's see if we are getting it. Okay. Hmm. So the variation is a little bit larger, but I won't do anything about it. So now let's go from the main menu and let's save the changes first, and we'll go inside from the main menu and start playing. So if we hit start, it should show our score here, the diamonds, and here's the high score. And if we click, so everything's almost getting difficult. And as you can see, we are able to collect the diamonds, and we'll need to increase the speed. So the starting speed, which is 0.02. So there is just a problem with the coroutine for the starting speed. Instead of 0.0 point, let's go with 0.1 f, double the speed. And after that, we have our obstacles spawning a little bit higher. Let's just leave it that, and let's start playing. So now our game should be finished. We are able to collect diamonds, so the diamond count is increasing, and there's a problem with the invoke repeating, and let's have it start spawning game objects at the start of the game, so there should not be any problem. So it will start spawning our game objects at the start. Instead of 2f, let's do 1.5f. So it should almost, so there are not any problems, and our game's working pretty correctly. So if you want to add more functionalities like the shop or the skin, it's just going to get the data from wherever you are going to store, and there will have our for quit. And let's restart and play the game again. If we, so there's our game quit function. And that was it for this video. So if you did like the video, do like and subscribe the channel. And if you want to suggest any more games, so I'll try. It should be almost simple for the level design and the functionality, and everything should all, so we You can almost explain the game in almost about 10 to 15 lines. So, like I create a design document and I do it everything step by step. So, first I design the rules of the game. So, inside the TappyPlane, it's just a normal platformer, and there's a plane, and it's affected by gravity, so we don't need. And if you click, it jump upwards, and there are obstacles in between. So we can explain the game in almost like 10 to 15 lines. So that are almost pretty much easy games for the beginner. So if you want to see more games, so try to have design rules of the game in almost half a page, then you'll be able to get around like is it a beginner or I'll need to more learn about it. So see you guys in the next video, and do like and subscribe the channel. Thank you for watching.